Hey YouTube, welcome to another episode of Comics and Stuff. My name is Devin and I'm your host as always. Thanks so much for tuning in. Happy Friday. Hope everybody is doing okay. I know that this week I am, in a good mood because I picked up one of my holy grails. It was a Green Lantern number 10 from 1943, so the Golden Age Green Lantern, and it was the first appearance of Vandal Savage, who is one of my top 5 favorite supervillains of all time. I'll put a picture up in the corner. Hopefully you see it. Hopefully you guys enjoy it because it's going to be gone now. So, if you looked at the title of this video this week, as normal, this one is the different ages of comic books. Now, you're probably thinking, like, Devin, everybody makes these videos, we already know what the ages of comic books are, blah, 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 there's gold, silver, bronze, and modern. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but that's not it. That's about half of it. So there's a lot more to the different comic book ages aside from just those mainstream ones that everybody knows about. There's ones that are recognized by different comic book institutions and different collectors and blah, blah, blah. So I kind of wanted to give you a broad scale of all of them. So, starting off, let's go with what everybody knows. Everybody knows the Golden Age of comic books. That's when all the original superheroes came out. That's when Superman first came out. That was the start of the comic books. Now, there was comic books prior to that, which a lot of you may know, but you may not know a lot about them. And then after Superman, then you get the Silver Age, where all the characters kind of get revamped for the first time. So you get Hal Jordan instead of Alan Scott for Green Lantern. You get, Aquaman kind of becomes famous more. He gets his own magazine finally. You get Barry Allen as the Flash as opposed to Jay Garrick, things like that. So that's the Silver Age, and then you get you also get Timely Comics that turns into Marvel, and you get the Spider-Man and the X-Men and Fantastic Four and all that in the Silver Age. Then you get into Bronze Age, and that's stuff like Wolverine or Bane, I guess technically. No, he's more of a Copper Age, but we'll get to that. Anyways, though, you get what I'm saying, and then you get into modern day comics where you have, so many different comic book publishers that there isn't really a main group of people I can point out. You just have everything. You have everybody. Everything is established. That is the modern age of comics. Now, we skipped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other ages because these ones aren't ones that are generally highlighted because they're not widely accepted by everybody. There's certain people who do and don't accept it, but I wanted to at least educate you guys since this whole comic book seems to have somehow geared itself towards people who are new to comic books. So let me just kind of start off with saying at first you have the Golden Age, but prior to the Golden Age, you have the Platinum Age. Prior to the Platinum Age, you have the Victorian Age. Prior to the Victorian Age, you have the Pioneer Age. And then prior to the Pioneer Age, you have just what I like to personally call the Ancient Age, which is where if you're really curious about the origins of comic books, you should read a book called Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. But anyways, so let's start off kind of like the Pioneer, Victorian, Platinum Age, because those three are often lumped together because those three ages were kind of where the comic book was figuring out what it was. So the Pioneer Age ranges from some random point in the 1500s till about 1828. Why does it end at 1828 is beyond me. I don't know why that specific year, but everywhere I look, that's just 1828. That's where it ends. Done. Dunzo. Whatever. And this book, I guess this era, I can say is recognized by the Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide. And if you don't know what the Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide is, it's loved and hated in the comic book industry. It is a guide that comes out yearly that will give you the general market prices without inflation of every single comic book ever published from the Golden Age up front to the Modern Age. A lot of rare comic dealers will use it, and a lot of rare comic book dealers are well, it's stupid, and we don't use it because we don't like the prices that are in it because they aren't realistic. And then other people live by it religiously, biblically, this is the comic Bible. So, I don't really want to share my opinions on it. I like it and don't like it the same way. But this video isn't about that. But it's a cool book. You should at least pick it up, read the front of it. But anyways, I digress. So, Pioneer Age, 1500s to 1828. So this is kind of like comic books before they were they weren't comic books. These were cartoon pictorials that were found in early America and Europe. They were generally like political cartoons. They were just one frame. They weren't like in sequence or anything like that, which I guess is kind of like the modern description of what a comic book is, but interpretations change over time. So this age, the Pioneer Age, was actually observed by a historian named Eric Caron, I believe, and there's a whole article about it. You can read it online. You can read it in the Overshoot Price Guide. I think it's the 2015-16 edition, so if you pick that up, read it. It's an interesting read. Then you get into the Victorian Age. So the Victorian Age is actually, it's kind of weird because they overlap. So the Victorian Age is 1646 to 1900. And these are comic books. This is focused on comics. I can't say books yet, but these are focused on comics in America before the famous comic strip called The Yellow Kid. What is The Yellow Kid? We'll get to that in a minute. But these were, like, have you guys ever seen, they were generally political, so if you've ever seen that little picture in, like, history class at school of a snake chopped into 13 pieces and it says join or die, that was a Victorian Age comic book, or comic. It was a political comic. It was kind of like, it was representing the 13 colonies that made up the United States. Whatever, this, I'm not a history teacher, so I'm doing the best I can. And then you get into the Platinum Age. So the Platinum Age is when comic strips in newspapers became a thing. This is when The Yellow Kid, which was deemed like one of the first modern day comics, came to be. So the Yellow Kid was just like, he was just like a little kid with the yellow shirt or whatever, and he just said things, and they appeared on his body, not necessarily in speech bubbles or thought bubbles, but he just, there's words around him, and he was like a comic strip. So the Platinum Age, that was 1883 to 1938. Okay. And then there's also kind of like a weird age. So you get to the Golden Age, right? So that's 1938. So like I explained, 1938, that's when Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the Spectre, Dr. Fate, a lot of, the Human Torch, the Submariner, all those guys, that's when they first come out. And Captain America, I guess, too. So Golden Age is called the Golden Age because that is when comics became a thing. Now, the reason they became comic books was because newspapers, when they ran out of like strips to print, they would take the strips and put them into a collected book and then sell them as reprints. And once they ran out of reprints to sell, they started making their own original stories, which then became the modern day comic book, which became a thing in 1938, which is what started the Golden Age of comics. Yeah, history. Learn that. Anyways, so you get to the Golden Age. It's 1938 to 1953, right? But there's this weird age that isn't recognized by everybody, but is recognized by a lot of people, which is called the Atom or the Atomic Age of comics, which was kind of like, is this the doom of comics? And it started with Frederick Wortham's book, Seduction of the Innocent, and a bunch of other people who thought that comic books were bad for young readers. And they thought that they were corrupting whatever. So there's something called the Atomic Age. It supposedly ran from 1946 to 56, so it was like a 10-year span. I personally don't care for it or recognize it, but it's something that needs to be acknowledged, I think. So that is the Atom or Atomic Age, whichever one you prefer, which was kind of, people were considered the end of comics because a lot of people started to hate them. But comics obviously had a kickback, so you get to 1954, boom, Silver Age starts off with Showcase number 4, Barry Allen, as the Flash, and the Silver Age is where a lot of our more favorite, memorable characters, besides Superman and Batman, Wonder Woman, all that, this is where Spider-Man comes in, the X-Men come in, Fantastic Four comes in, this is where, Barry Allen comes in, Hal Jordan, the names that we know and love of all of our characters, that's where they really come in, is in the Silver Age. And the Silver Age is one of my favorite things. I love Silver Age sci-fi. That is what I personally collect, Silver and Gold Age sci-fi. So, for me, I really, really loved Showcase comics, Mystery in Space, a lot of Adam Strange, Space Ranger. So this is where a lot of people really got into comics and where a lot of the most valuable comics to date come from, aside from the first appearance of Superman, which is like $1 million to $1 zillion. But that's the Silver Age of comic books, and you know that. So then you get into the Bronze Age of comic books, and that's, you know, Wolverine. And guys, I don't really, honestly, guys, I'm sorry, I don't really know or follow Bronze Age like that. I'm Silver Age and before, but I know that Wolverine came out. I know that there's just a lot of stuff happening. I don't get me started. Because then I'll just make a fool of myself. Love you, YouTube. Anyways. And then after the Bronze Age, another form of argument happens where people are either like, well, there's the Copper Age, and then other people are like, well, there's the Modern Age. So the Copper Age was 84 to 91. So, you know, the Bronze Age was 70 to 83, and then Copper Age, 84 to 91. And that was kind of like the precursor to the near comics crash in the 90s. For those of you who don't know, the comic book industry almost completely crashed in the 90s, and that's an entirely different video that I do not have the time to make or to talk about right now. Anyways, though, so you have the Copper Age. A lot of people will recognize that. That's recognized by Overstreet. That's recognized by eBay. You know, a lot of like auction houses, they will recognize Copper Age comics, but a lot of other people are like, no, it's bronze then modern. So there's the Copper Age of comic books. So that is kind of like I guess technically it's not when like Harley Quinn and Hellboy and Deadpool all came out, but that's kind of like the feel of the comics in the Copper Age. It's kind of like that gray area between the Bronze and Modern Age, duh. But I mean, like, that's kind of the feel of what the books were, so take those three heroes and, you know, put them in that area. That's kind of what it was like. And then we get into the Modern Age, and then there was that weird area in the 90s where there was all those chromium covers and the overprinting and then the almost crashing and then the selling of rights and the ongoing feud between Marvel and Fox and blah, 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 blah. And now we're in 2016 where, you know, we're in the Modern Age of comic books. Everything is crazy and exploding, and all those people who weren't nerds are all of a sudden now becoming nerds. And then if you were already a nerd before it was cool, you feel like a god because you're smart and you know stuff that your friends don't, and you can explain it to them. Whoosh. Anyways, yeah, that's really it. I mean, so, you know, let's just quick recap. Pioneer Age, 1500s to 1828, also has the Victorian Age, which is 1646 to 1900, and then the Platinum Age, which is 1883 to 1938, and then you have the Golden Age, which is 1938 to 1953, but then you have that weird Atom Age, which is 46 to 56, which overlaps between the Gold and the Silver Age, and the Silver Age is 54 to 69, and then you got the Bronze Age, 70 to 83, and then the Copper Age, 84 to 91, and then the present day Modern Age, which is 92 to today. Now, is there going to be another age of comics, or are we just going to stay in modern because that's what everything is? I don't know. I am not an expert. Kind of. But, you know, I'm curious to see what you guys think, so put your opinions and comments and ideas and thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and my nonsensical ranting, please hit the subscribe button right here. Check it out. Make sure you guys tune in next week, because next week is my 1-year YouTube anniversary. I'm so excited. You know, and if you've been following me for the whole year, thank you. I really appreciate it. But we'll talk about that next week. And if you want to check out my website, see my weekly indie comics review, hit the link above my head. And then make sure that you guys listen to my podcast, which comes out weekly on Sundays on SoundCloud, called Cross Country Comics, with my dear friend Stephen Hogan. So that's it, YouTube. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will try to see you Monday, and if I don't, then I'll see you Tuesday, and if I don't, I'll see you Friday.